Okay. Okay. That's more in the middle, right?
Yes.
Of Yeah. So I know my sister just moved to
I've been to
San
Florida,
Diego.
but okay.
Yeah, what were you saying?
I've been to Miami, but not Michigan.
Okay. Yep. I wasn't a big fan of Florida. I'll be very honest.
It's all
Um,
right.
yeah. I was made for the cold. So, yeah, I burn too easily. Anything above
Oh,
70, yeah,
so
anything above 70, I get a little, I'm like, that's hot. So,
so you wouldn't like Malaysia then? Malaysia is very, very hot.
oh, I've heard stories. So, I would love to visit though. One
Yes,
of
please.
my previous student, Ellie, she's told me so many stories.
Ah,
And so I always ask questions too, just because, and like she'd show me pictures and everything. So I would love to visit once, once traveling becomes a little bit easier.
yes, do visit
And
us and do inform us when you visit. We can bring you around, give you a
yes,
tour.
that would be amazing. That would be amazing. I know I'm trying to see where Ellie is right now. I think she moved back home, but I'm not sure.
Will she be joining us?
No, not tonight. And then my other student, you know what? I think she's actually in New York.
Oh,
Yeah, Ellie is actually in New York right now. I wasn't sure where she decided to go after graduation. So I always like keep tabs on all of them. So,
it's nice of you.
yeah, I try to. So, I know that's one of their graduation gifts is that we get to actually follow each other on social media
Oh,
because I don't have any of my students on social media until after they graduate.
oh,
So, so yes, and we get to, creep on each other as well. So,
all
so
right.
yeah.
Zarina, have you tested do a rehearsal?
Not yet. But I have given you, Shauna, I have given you the privilege to share. If you have a slide, okay, you can
Yeah,
use the share button there. Okay, if you want to try.
perfect. Sure. Let's see. Oh, just a second. I have to get mine set up.
And we are streaming this to YouTube, our YouTube channel, and it's already
Great.
started.
I'm on the web. There we go. Oh, okay, just
Can you see the menu share there?
let's. Oh
Uh,
yeah, I'm sorry. It
at the
was
top.
my computer. It needed me to set something up. Needed me to grant. I understand. I just did that. All right, I'm gonna have to exit and come back because it has to have me restart WebEx really quick. So I will be right back.
Okay, okay, we'll wait for you.
So, all right, I might just have to get. Oh, there we go. It popped up. You read my mind.
Okay, now can
All
you
right, there.
do the sharing?
Yes. Let me. Oh, okay. Here we go. There we go. You make it nice and big for everybody.
Okay, this is good. Okay, we will start at 11 o'clock. Okay, 11, and then our MC will start at 11, and then okay, you can just leave your slide here.
Yeah.
We are starting at 10, right, Zarina?
10, sorry, sorry. Sorry. Because we used to start our webinar at 11 o'clock. Only for today, we start at 10.
All right. Do you just want me to start when it hits that time?
Let our MC introduce you first.
Perfect. Yep. I wasn't sure. So that's great.
Okay, just
Assalamualaikum and very good. I'm sorry, I will start again. Assalamualaikum and very good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar hosted by the National Autism Resource Center. Thank you all for taking time out and being here today. I am Shafika, one of the interns for NARC, and I will be the MC for today's webinar. Just to inform our new audience, NARC is a one-stop repository and reference resources for anything related to people with autism in Malaysia, including research, services, and consultancies. Today's webinar will be a special session since we are bringing you the speaker from ABA Technologies Incorporated, Melbourne, Ms. Shauna. ABA stands for Applied Behavioral Analysis, which is very synonym with intervention therapy for autistic children. I am positive that most of today's attendees are familiar with ABA therapy. Before we start, let us get to know our speaker's background. Shauna Costello graduates from Western Michigan University with MA in Behavior Analysis. Upon graduating, Shauna became board certified and soon began working as the Behavior Analysis Program Coordinator of Total Education Solutions in Metro Detroit, where she focused on in-clinic, in-home, and school consultation for children and young adults. She has a background in college teaching at Auckland University in Rochester Hills and Florida Institute of Technology, supervising master students and capstone projects. She now works full-time for ABA Technologies Incorporated as the professional development specialist, creating online continuing education courses to disseminate the science and technology of behavior analysis to influence the social cultural change on a national and global scale. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ms. Shauna.
Thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here today. Very excited. And I'm going to be talking about something that's really close to my heart. And we're going to be talking about some at-home strategies using the science of behavior. And I want to preface this by saying this might not be a big surprise. And that's okay, because with all of my experience with parent training and working with kids of all ages, these are just little things that you can change in your day-to-day life that will make everyone's life so much easier. So I know we just went through my background, but again, just to show you how I got to where I am, I started as a pre-med student and I actually ended up switching to behavior analysis and found it's exactly what I wanted and I loved it. And so I just kept going with it and I still love it to this day. And after I graduated, I went into Metro Detroit and worked as the program coordinator, where we worked in homes, clinic, school consulting, and we also opened up 2 more locations in the greater Metro Detroit area. And that was with ages about 1 to 22 years old. And that ranged anywhere from autism spectrum disorder to other developmental disabilities, and also just behavioral challenges in general that parents may have been having. And then I actually ended up going to independent consulting. And this was probably one of the best experiences of my life. And it really taught me a lot about working with caregivers in general, even more than I already knew. But because this method of treatment was where I worked one-on-one with the caregivers and they were the ones implementing, not a technician or somebody else. It was the parents working one-on-one with their kid and having to really work these strategies into their everyday life. And that ranged in age from 5 to 70 years old. And so, I was in homes and I was also in adult care facilities or adult homes as well, working with staff and caregivers to help with some behavior changes as well. But then I decided I wanted to help continue teaching and training future practitioners, training professionals who are already in the field and helping them learn new skills and refine some of their other skills. So that's how I got here today. And so let's get into this a little bit more. I want to talk just a little bit about the science of behavior and where it came from. And it's relatively new compared to a lot of other similar fields. In 1913 was the very first writing from John B. Watson. And from then on came all the other founders of our field, including B.F. Skinner is one of the main forefathers of our field. And when we really talk about the science of behavior, it gets compared a lot to, psychology or like some of these other fields, but it can really be thought of more of a natural science, like biology or chemistry, just in a different way. And the reason I say that is because unlike, there's traditional cognitive psychology where thoughts cause behavior. Well, with behavior analysis, it is actually the environment that is having a huge effect on behavior. And so, we have the interplay between your genes, your genetic makeup, but then we also have your environment. And if you change your environment, you can change behavior. And so one of the easiest examples I like to give to some undergraduate students are when you come to school, you act one way. When you go to work, you act another way. And then if you go home, you're going to act a completely different way as well. So that's one way to think about how the environment that you are in changes your behavior. And when we start figuring out why, the reasons behind people are acting the way that they do, we can change little aspects of the environment to then change the behaviors that are occurring. And a lot of times people ask where this can be implemented. And, today we're going to be talking about at home, but it can really be implemented everywhere. So that's one of our goals at ABA Tech is to really disseminate the science and get it out there and show how it can be implemented. It's implemented in the workplace, on company behavior, it's student behavior, our own behavior. Self-management is a big thing that I'm very passionate about. But just know that, even though we're talking about at home right now, this can really be done almost anywhere. And so what we're going to go through today are some quick tips. And so I'm going to start with some of the science of consequences. So what are consequences? What are some of these words that we often hear, like positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, punishment, and also how we can choose the most appropriate consequences as well. Then I'm going to go into praise, preference assessments, giving choices, first then follow through and data collection. So let's jump into consequences. And so what are consequences? These get confused very often. So we know, a lot of us know about positive reinforcement and punishment. So, and we usually connect that to good or bad. But that's not necessarily always true. The biggest thing with consequences is that it is something that follows your behavior that will either increase or decrease the likelihood of it occurring again in the future. So if you put your hand on a hot stove, if the stove is on, you might get burnt and you're probably not going to do that again. But again, if the stove is off, that's just neutral. That's a neutral consequence. And that doesn't really, what you do in the future will, show what type of consequence that was. And when I say type of consequence, there's positive and negative consequences. And again, when we hear these, typically we think of good and bad, but it's not just good and bad. When we're talking about positive and negative, we're actually talking about adding stimuli to the environment or taking stimuli away. So when we think about positive reinforcement, that means that we are adding something that will then increase behavior in the future. If we're talking about negative reinforcement, we're actually talking about taking something away that, again, will increase behavior in the future. So a really good example of negative reinforcement is escaping. So, escaping chores, escaping homework. Those are all types of negative reinforcement that may increase the likelihood that they're going to engage in those behaviors again in the future so that they can escape doing chores or homework. And then punishment. Punishment gets a bad rap. And there are very bad and severe forms of punishment, but not all punishment is severe. And when I'd like to make sure that when I'm teaching my students that we talk about punishment as it's simply you're just decreasing future behavior. And I like to always remind people, if the behavior didn't decrease, it wasn't punished. And if the behavior didn't increase, it wasn't reinforced. So those are some of the things we're going to talk about once we get into that preference assessment area as well. And then when we talk about these types of consequences, this is one of the biggest things that I see when I go into homes or almost anything. I know my parents we're also guilty of this, but the consequences should match the behavior. So they should be similar or connected to the behavior. One thing that, my parents were guilty of were making empty threats, or were saying, you're grounded for a month. They never, that was never an effective consequence because it was never, never followed through on. And it also wasn't necessarily connected to the behavior. So for example, if we have a child who, dumps food on the ground or, purposely knocks their drink over, as a consequence that is connected to that is going to be them cleaning it up and, restoring that situation back to good. So, them cleaning up their mess, that is a directly related consequence to the behavior. And so, and that can be taken for good or for bad. You know, it can be taken for, you know, if they complete their homework, you know, we don't say, oh, great, let's go to Disneyland, because that's just not connected. That's, you know, that's just for completing homework. We don't necessarily give one of the biggest consequences that we can. We keep it very similar to that level of where homework is at. And so also when we talk about consequences, I always want to make sure I bring up praise. Praise is very, very important. And again, like I said earlier, this may not be new. We all know that praise is important, but it's oftentimes what I have found and what research has found is that we as humans are, and as parents and as friends and colleagues, we're much more likely to speak up about something when it's bad. And so we typically just need to flip that. We need to flip it. We need to start saying more, and we need to start bringing up more and more positive things and praising. And research has shown throughout the years that as we age throughout life, the amount of praise we actually come into contact with significantly decreases. And praise can actually be much more effective than punishment. Because think of it like this: when you focus on positives, you get more positives. So when you're focusing on negatives or reprimands or, you know, certain aspects, you're going to get more of that behavior. Whatever you're focusing on, you're going to get more of. So that goes for good or bad, unfortunately. But how do you give effective praise? And, you know, we often hear good job, attaboy, nice work. Those aren't terrible, but they're not as effective as they could be. So we want to be as immediate as possible when giving consequences in general, but also praise. We want to be immediate. We also want to be we want to be behavior specific. And so what that means is you want to tell the person or the child exactly what they did that you liked and that you want to see more of as well. So, you know, great job on your multiplication tables, amazing job sweeping the floor. It can be almost, you know, just very specific to what they did, so they know exactly what you would like to see more of in the future. And then also your tone. So you want to have a positive affect. You know, you want your tone to not be neutral or I sometimes tend to sound sassy sometimes when I talk. So that is something that I know I have to watch out for. So tone is very, very important in how you are presenting praise. So next we get to preference assessments. And it sounds exactly like what it is. We are just assessing what that person prefers at the time. And so a really good example of this, and that just shows an example of my changing preferences, is right now I'm severely craving chocolate, like crazy. So probably after this, I'm gonna head out and I'm going to get some chocolate. But if I had just eaten, you know, a huge candy bar or a whole thing of chocolate ice cream, my preference for chocolate might severely diminish because, you know, I just had a ton of it. And it just shows that our preferences are changing minute to minute. And so when we're at home and we, you know, want to try to get our kids to engage in certain activities, figuring out what is important to them is going to be very important, because that's actually going to tell you exactly what they will be motivated for to work at that point in time, whether it's chores, homework, daily routines, figuring out what is important to them in that moment will greatly impact their effectiveness to get things done. And to do this, what you want to do is, give a couple options of toys or activities that are available to them. So again, when we go back to matching the consequences to the behavior, there's different scales of toys. There's different scales of activities. Like I said, Disney World, that's not always on the table. So we don't want to offer that. But you want to give 2 to 4 options and then let them choose what they want to work for. And to go into that some more, also giving choices. Giving choices is an absolutely amazing intervention that you can put into place in your home. And I understand that giving choices is not always an option. Sometimes it's, nope, this has to be done right now. But if you can give children an option, it increases their motivation greatly. So if there's a way for, if there's 2 things that need to be done, but they don't necessarily need to be done in a specific order, give them those options. Say you can do A or B, and then let them choose which one they do first. And it really gives them this sense of control, that they have the ability to choose what their next step is as well. And also, another quick tip is first then. And this one is really great because you are going to be setting very clear expectations. And this is one thing I like to remind people of, is that no one is a mind reader. And one thing too that working with families has taught me, and growing up on my own, it was often, I often hear, well, they should know. They should know they have to do that. Not if that expectation hasn't been set. And those expectations become set and routine by having clear and consistent expectations. Consistency is key. And so what you want to do with this is you say, first, you do the dishes, then you can play on your iPad. And it seems very small. Again, this seems like a very small thing, but it is actually huge, because this also plays into the next tip as well, which is following through. And this is, again, when I brought up that consistency piece. You have to say what you mean and mean what you say. I can't tell you how many times, this contract, this mini contract, is set with a parent that they said, great, if you do your homework, we can go get ice cream. And then they do their homework, but then the parent changes their mind. And they're like, oh, well, we'll go get it at some other time. Following through on what you say you're going to do is so significantly important. And not only for, changing behaviors at home, but also teaching our children to be reliable, and that we are reliable and that we stick to our word. Because if they learn that we say what we mean, that means that that's going to increase their compliance with our directions later as well. And again, this seems like a small thing, but it's all of these little small things that are going to add up in the long run. And when I said I was working as an independent consultant, just working with the parents, not having, a tech come in and work with the student and the child, but me working with the parents, and then the parent is in charge of doing all of it, which, I mean, that's our job as parents as well. But I saw I saw way better changes in behavior than I did if there was a tech there, because the parents are learning how to do these small things. And really, they're also learning how to fit them into their daily routine and their daily schedule and keep them consistent, because consistency and following through are key. So just a reminder with the follow through, you know, we don't want to change our mind on a reward. We don't want to offer something that we can't follow through on. And we don't want to threaten something that's not going to happen. That's probably the one that I have seen the most, is threatening something that is just, it's not going to happen. And trust me, kids learn that. And they learn when it's just an empty threat, basically. So one of the big ones I hear nowadays, because of all of the electronics that our kids have, are, you know, I'm going to take your tablet away for a month. And when I hear that from a parent, I say, are you actually taking it away for the full month? And they say, oh no, maybe a couple days. I was like, okay, great. Let's just change what we say then. You know, just flip what we say a little bit. Not a big change, but a little bit. So instead of saying, you know, I'm going to take your tablet away for a month, which, you know, after hearing that a few times, your child is going to learn that, no, you're not. Say, great, your tablet is coming with me for the rest of the night. You can earn it back tomorrow, or, you know, a couple days. Do whatever you're going to be able to do to stick with it. And again, all of these that we've gone over so far, these all have to work for you and your family and your schedule. And that's the really nice thing about all of these, is that they can all be individualized to you and your child and your family dynamics as a whole. Not one thing is going to work for everybody. I wish I could say I had that anecdote, that antidote that just says, here's the one thing you can do to just fix everything. But unfortunately, that's not how this is. And it's really about figuring out how you can make this work for you. My life is not the same as yours, and I fully acknowledge that. And so, you know, that's why we have to figure out how to make it work for us. And so one of the other very, very important things, and this is this is a hard one. I fully acknowledge that, but I always like to bring it up, is data. We want to collect data, because how do we know if what we're doing actually works? We don't. It's all just, we think it is. So the best thing you can do is just find ways, again, that you can fit taking data into your life. So, you know, it may be easy to have a, you know, like a whiteboard or a chalkboard or a paper to just take some notes on and data on. Or, you know, in our life of technology, you know, on our phones, we have plenty of sharing apps. So document sharing apps. So if, you know, if you and your family as well would like to be able to share all of that and contribute openly and easily, your phone is a very good way to do that. Whether it's an already programmed app, or whether it's just like a Google Doc or a Google Sheet, something you can easily share. And so this is one thing too that I really like. Once children get to a certain age, they can actually be a part of this too, and it's not all on the parents. It's not all on us anymore. We can start to shift some of this data responsibility to our children. And this is really great because this actually helps teach them self-awareness in their behaviors and, what their routines are they, what their goals are they making their goals, and also in responsibility. It keeps them accountable to somebody else other than themselves. They're not only responsible to themselves, but they're checking in, they're having follow-up meetings, and really establishing that self-awareness and the responsibility are very important. So I did want to go through just a couple examples that you could do at home, and kind of explain them and why we would use those. So the first one is ABC data. And so what that stands for actually is antecedent behavior consequence. And so what that means is, in this table, I've typed it out what it means. What happened before the behavior, what was the behavior, and then what was that consequence. And so in my example here, I said that, great, on this date, I gave a direction, they yelled and stormed out of the room, and the parent reprimanded them. And using this kind of data can help us really look at figuring out why our children are engaging in those behaviors in the first place. And so if we can see, again, when I go back to the environment, this is part of the environment. What is maintaining that behavior? Why is this behavior still happening? So with this one too, I like to mention is, in this example, if yelling and after this, if yelling and storming out of the room continues and you're always reprimanding them, reprimanding might actually be a reinforcer for them. Because think about it this way, negative attention is still attention. Attention can also be, good, like positive or negative, can be good or bad. But a reprimand is attention. And then we go back to, one of the other tips that we talked about, which was praise. And yes, you're not going to praise them for yelling and storming out of the room, but you can praise them, at other times throughout the day when they are behaving how you see fit. And that will then decrease the likelihood, because they're getting that attention in all throughout the day for doing the things that, you have set up with them, that they'll do more of those and less of the yelling and the storming out of the room. So, yep, just remember, negative attention is just as reinforcing as positive attention. So even eye contact sometimes can be enough, actually. So yeah, ABC data really helps us just figure out why the behavior is happening. You might see, that the same thing happens before the behavior every single time. So then you might go and figure out, okay, how can I, change my approach to doing this so that they will behave how I want them to, and things like that. So ABC data is a little bit more of the intense, it's the most intensive data that I'm going to talk about tonight. But I wanted to make sure that, this type of recording was given to you so that you could, if this is something you're looking at, trying to figure out, you have some tools to do that. Also, we have frequency or count, just counting how many times a certain behavior happened during the day, or, from after school until bedtime, things like that. Another form of this, it's not exactly frequency data, but I wanted to make sure to get this in there, is a token economy. So I just put a picture here of an example. You can make this, again, you make this for what works for you and your family. And so for this one, you can also get your child involved. You find out, you do your preference assessment. What do they want to work for? Okay, it's like, great. On this example, we have 20 stickers and they get to play Angry Birds for 10 minutes. So it's cleaning up, and how they can earn stickers is they clean up their toys, they ask for things by using nice words, and they play with their dog using gentle hands. So, and that's just setting up your environment as a parent to then be able to praise your child more and more and more as well, which then means we're going to see more and more and more of these behaviors in the future. And this was probably one of the best experiences I had during my time back in the clinical consulting realm. I was working with a family who had 2 foster sons, and I was in there helping them with some of their behaviors that they were experiencing. And it was so neat. We had been working together for probably about a month, and we had been talking about token economies, slowly working in little things at a time. So it wasn't this huge change for these boys. And one day I walked in, and not my mom, but the mom I was working with had this whole thermometer system set up on the refrigerator, one for each boy. She sat down with both of them, got a big list together of things that they either wanted or they wanted to do, activities, toys, games, anything. She got a whole big list. And then she actually, she put them in tiers. She ranked them from lowest, like, okay, you don't have to do too much to get like this toy, but you have to do a lot to get this toy. And then she made a point system for behaviors that she would like to see around the house, and more points for bigger things. And as the boys completed these, they got to fill up their thermometer, and it was so great. The boys got excited about it. I mean, it's not everything's perfect all of the time though. Like there's always setbacks in it, but it was really, really great. It took a lot of stress off the parents as well, because even if a negative behavior happened at one night, they were able to, the next morning they would restart again. And, when you did X, Y, or Z, you got your tablet back, you got your game console back. It wasn't, it took a lot less stress off the parents as well. So this is just one example, another example of some data you can take. And then also I want to throw out a couple more in there, because these are some issues that I see when I go work with families. One is duration, so how long a behavior is happening. And this one, whether it's tantrums or another big time I see it is when we're sleep training with our toddlers. And sleep training is a big one. So measuring duration can actually help you see if what you're doing is, decreasing that amount of time that they're, out of bed, or the amount of time that they're in bed. So just depending on which behavior you want to measure, the out of bed or the in bed. Another one is called latency. And so this one is actually just how long it takes us to start something. So if you ask your children to do homework, or you ask them to brush their teeth, from the time you ask that question until the time they start, that's latency. And sometimes parents ask me like, well, I just want them to do things faster. It's like they dilly-dally all around after I ask them to do it and don't just, go start doing what I asked. So measuring that time from when you asked to when they start is another thing, is another measurement. And it's another way that you can see if what you're doing is working as well, is if they're jumping right to it and following your directions. And so yeah, again, these two can be a little bit tougher, but they can be set up just like the frequency data can be set up as well. Just, a nice little table or a piece of paper and a pen, just writing it down. And so as I'm, coming to the end now, I did want to just mention that we do have some additional resources if anyone is ever interested. Please visit our website at abatechnologies.com. We have blogs, infographics, those are all free. And then we do have some online courses as well. Those do cost money, but our blogs and infographics and our podcast is always free. So, I put a couple blog titles here. COVID-19 Survival Guide for Caregivers. That's a really great resource as well with how you can set up your environment if you are, working from home and doing school at home as well. Another one is Mysterious Science that really just explains the science of behavior a little bit more as well. And then I also put one of our infographics on here is how do I get my child to do what I want them to do? In both this infographic that I'm showing and the Mysterious Science, those ones are available in English and in Mandarin as well. And so one thing too that I want to mention is if there's anything on the website that you would like to see translated, or you would like to, if there's a topic that you're like, I would like to learn more about that, please do not hesitate to reach out to me, because that is our goal. We want to have as many helpful resources as possible. And, we'll be continuing to work with the National Autism Resource Center and hopefully be able to, produce some of these more trainings, webinars, but also hopefully some of these products as well to help with some of this. And so I just want to go over a little summary again, just to recap. Praise, praise, praise. And no one expects you to be perfect. I don't. I am not. But just remember, the more good stuff you focus on, the more good stuff you're going to get from your child as well. Again, choose appropriate consequences. It can be really easy to get heated. I know it's not easy. Parenting is a 24/7 job and it almost never shuts off. So, but let's, just refocus and choose those appropriate consequences for a behavior, whether it's a positive or, a negative, a behavior we want to see more of or a behavior we want to see less of. Another one is preference assessments, just making sure that we know exactly what our children want to be working for at that moment, increase their motivation to do that. And also giving choices when it's appropriate, when that's an option, give them a choice. Let them feel as though they're in control. They have some decision-making power and to decide, what they can do and when they can do it. Also, first then, just stating very clear and concisely, right to the point. First you do this, then you'll get this. And then follow through. Say what you mean and mean what you say. And then also, if you have, if you have the willpower to stick it out and do it, and you want to collect some data on it to see if you're, what you're doing is really working, take some data. And again, there's my contact information at the bottom as well. We'll be back with the National Autism Resource Center throughout the next year on different topics. But, if you go to our website or you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me at all. I know there's a little bit of a time delay from where I'm at. It's about 11 hours, but it hasn't been an issue so far. That's the wonderful world of technology now. So please feel free to reach out if you would like any additional resources or would like to see, something new.
Okay, thank you so much, Ms. Shauna, for the useful tips and very informative talk. So now we will move to the Q&A session. So let's see what are the question asked.
Dr. Izzat?
So these are the question asked by the participants.
Great. Okay.
Yeah.
First question. Is giving a phone or tablet as a reward considered a positive or negative reinforcement? Great question. So it depends on what is happening in the future. So typically, how I would say this is that giving a phone, so the giving part is the positive because you're adding something to the environment. And so if that increases behavior in the future, that's reinforcement. So just remember, positive means you're adding something. So, giving your phone would be adding, so that makes it positive. All right, how to tell kids in a positive manner if they show negative behavior? Great question. So this is where we want to, we just want to flip what we say. So instead of saying, you can say, this behavior was unacceptable, but make sure you're also saying what they should be doing. So really focusing on a different behavior. So if they're doing something in that moment, get them to do something else. Tell them to do a different behavior. Really focus on, and what you're saying, you want to have a bigger focus on the behaviors that you want to see more of. It's a really hard thing to do. I fully acknowledge that. It's so easy. It's like one thing too that I notice with this is that like our names can become very aversive because for me, my parents really only said my name, especially my first and my middle name if I was in trouble. So our names can become aversive too. So what we really want to do is just be focusing on what they should be doing as well. So even if you have an example and you want to type back in, I would love to hear what, kind of what's a behavior that you deal with. That'd be wonderful. All right, what is the best mechanism of reprimand for an autistic child because eye contact may not? Great. So this is going to end up being what works for your child. So everything that we do is individualized to a child. And so this is where that ABC recording can really come in handy. That can really help you figure out what is actually happening before and after a behavior, and if what you're doing after the behavior is effective at decreasing that behavior. Because, eye contact, speech, talking, all of those may be very, very difficult with people on the autism spectrum. And we have to figure out what works for that child. And so, yeah, I would really start seeing, take data on what you're doing. So, what you're doing after, one of those negative behaviors comes out, take data on what you're doing. And if that behavior starts decreasing, then you know that it's working because that behavior is decreasing. But also when we talk about reprimands, depending on the functionality of the child with autism, words might not work. So we might have to think about, removing preferred items as well, or even, timeouts, depending on, again, the functionality. But timeouts, we have, removing those preferred items after a behavior occurs also, that can also be very effective. So if words, because words might not work. So. All right. How to answer burning question from a child. As an example, why is the sky blue? This is great. This is one thing I've had to become very okay with saying when I'm teaching. It's okay to say, I don't know, but you can also say, let's go figure it out. And this is another way for you to get, involved with your child. And also it teaches your child how to problem solve and figure out how to get an answer that they are looking for. And it also shows them that, just because I may not have the answer doesn't mean I don't want to help you. So, or you can just say, if you don't want them searching on Google all the time or a search engine, you can also say, let me figure that out for you. So, and then figure it out for them and go back. That also shows them that you're reliable and that you're going to do what you say as well. So they'll start coming to you more and wanting to engage with you. All right, for reasons I can't mention here, my young adult who has autism did not get the chance to do an intervention at earlier ages. Very often that happens, unfortunately. It is very difficult to change some of his negative behavior. It is. So this unfortunately is happening everywhere. The older children get, and now young adult, the more services that they start to lose. And again, once children get older, like you said, it's really hard to change some of those negative behaviors because they have a much longer time learning those behaviors and what they get for them. And so my advice, I would say, really make a list for yourself. What are some of the biggest behaviors that you want to change? And then I would start one at a time. Just go one at a time. Take ABC data on it because you want to figure out, why is my son engaging in this behavior? And then once you figure out why, then you can start changing the environment a little, the environment a little bit around it. And when I say environment, I also, his environment also includes our behavior. So, whether you're always doing the same thing, following that behavior, or see what's going on, because then you can change either what happens before the behavior to see if you can, prevent the behavior from happening, or you can change the consequence so that, instead you're giving a consequence that may decrease that behavior. One thing I do want to mention with this though, when we're trying to decrease behaviors, we are going to see what's called an extinction burst. And what that means, all that means is that it gets worse before it gets better. Example of that is if you have a light bulb that goes out in your house and you walk into the room and you flip it, a lot of times people like flip it up and down and then they'll stop. And that flipping up and down, that's getting worse before it gets better. So that's, just know things always get worse before they get better, unfortunately. If you can find, an independent consultant, I would highly suggest that. But if you can't, you have to do it yourself. There are so many resources out there that can help you. And, you want to do something that's going to be easy for you as well. So make your list of the behaviors that you want to decrease. Start with one of them. Take that ABC data, figure out what's happening, and then either try and prevent the behavior from happening, or you can change the consequence to decrease that behavior. But just take some time for you too when you're doing this, because it can be difficult. And this is a note, for some of the parents on here who have younger children. If there's something difficult happening, get it while they're young. because they're only going to get bigger and stronger. So that is one thing that I often would tell my parents, is that they're really young right now. It's much easier to change. And again, would you rather be doing this with a 5-year-old or a 15-year-old? And so good luck, good luck. You know, please, I mean, I would love if you visited the website, and some of the online courses might also help as well. Just getting some of those, you know, that additional knowledge from some really amazing presenters in the field. But good luck. All right, can you explain further on sleep training? Okay, is it talking to the subconscious mind? Okay, so sleep training, when I talk about sleep training, I mean, typically what I mean is getting our kids to go to sleep in their own bed. And you know, there's a lot of different factors though that go into this. So there's cultural differences. There's a ton of different things that go into this. So you want to look at the different methods of sleep training and see which one is going to work best for you and which one you can follow through on. So one example of sleep training is the cry it out method, where you let your toddler cry it out. For older children, like, 3, 4, 5, who, may get out of the bed and come out and find you, it may just be taking them back to their room and putting them back in bed, and then leave. No words, nothing. Or there's also the possibility of you stay in the room until they fall asleep, and then each night you move back further and further and further until you're out of the room. So that's what I'm talking about when I talk about sleep training. There's often a really big issue with a lot of the kids I've worked with on the autism spectrum with sleeping. And so really finding which version is going to work best for you and your family, the one you can follow through on and stay consistent with, is going to be what the best one is for you as well. All right, how can parents stimulate autistic children to play together with friends or siblings? Great question. Expose them to it more. The more exposure, the better. This is actually where peer training comes in. So you may have to actually not only work with your child with autism, but you'll have to actually work with their friends or their siblings to try to, get them to engage with the child. So yeah, peer training and sibling training is really cool too, because you can use them to your advantage as well. And you can teach them some of these little things as well. Siblings, I'll tell you what, siblings have some of the best time with some of these quick tips that we went over today, and they're usually really good at it. I don't know if it's just because, they're younger and they're not like full-blown adults yet. They get really excited to do some of this stuff and to help. And so use siblings to your advantage. Thank you so much for this question. But yes, expose them and work not only with the child with autism, but also with the friend or sibling as well. Thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm interested in online courses. What will you recommend for new parents? All right, new parents. So this one is not behavior analytic, but she's actually an economist who focuses on family behavior and parenting. Her name is Emily Oster, Dr. Emily Oster, Emilyoster. She is phenomenal, and she has data and research to back up everything that she talks about. So I highly suggest her. If you are looking for more, like I would love if you emailed me so that we can kind of chit chat about exactly what you're looking for, because then I'll be able to give you some much more specific recommendations and links. So yeah, if you could email me, that would be great. I would love to find some stuff to help you. But yes, my one big recommendation for new parents or expecting parents as well, not just new, but expecting, is Dr. Emily Oster. So yes, that's what I would definitely recommend.
Well, looks like we have answered all the questions. Miss Shauna, is there anything else you would like to conclude?
The only thing is any of the participants, I have some more open access to the panelists here, but any of the participants, please don't hesitate to reach out to me, or to the National Autism Resource Center if you need my email. I would love to talk to you and give you anything that, I can, and potentially create some products for you. If we're missing something, I would love to help create that with my team. So please reach out. That would be wonderful.
Thank you, Miss Shauna, for your precious and valuable tips and time. I am sure all of us have gained a lot of information that would be beneficial in our daily life with the autistic kids. As for audience, please feel free to fill out the feedback form for e-certificate and jam latihan for your ITM staff. Please provide correct name as it will be used to print on the e-cert. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of our webinar for today. On behalf of our organizer and ARC, we would like to extend our deepest appreciation and gratitude to all of our distinguished participants for being here with us today. Hope to see you again next year. Stay safe and have a nice day.